All right, hey, welcome everyone to our reporting and analytics webinar week. This is our first session. We got 4 or 5 of them for you, so be sure to check the calendar and join. We're starting off today. Rich Bendickson from Dashboard Gear has graciously agreed to come join us here at our headquarters in Baltimore to talk about his product and how we're utilizing that to be more successful with reporting and analytics in the cloud. My name is Matthew Nye. I'm principal consultant with RPI, specializing in reporting and analytics. Been doing this for 20 some odd years. Rich and I have actually been working together on various projects across various organizations for about that length of time. I think we're right around our 20th anniversary here this year, 2003, 2002, something like that. But
I had more hair then.
Yeah, probably. I was a young strapping buck myself then. Now I've got a whole bunch of gray hair and throughout my back every time I try to pick up a piece of paper. So, but we've learned a lot in that time, and we're hoping to share some of that with you. Rich, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Rich Bendickson with Dashboard Gear. A little bit about Dashboard Gear. We're an organization that provides products and services for Infor, as well as Kronos and the Microsoft space. Everything with reporting, analytics, business intelligence. And I've been doing this for 30 plus years. A couple times employee of Lawson's and consulting companies. So a lot of experience in the reporting and analytics space.
Great. Yeah, and so that you kind of beat me to my first question. The whole idea here is for us to interrogate Rich here on basically everything reporting and analytics, and really get a good idea of how we can use that. So for those of you, those people that are maybe new to Infor or just haven't heard the name Dashboard Gear, you mentioned it just there, but maybe at a little more detailed level, what is it that Dashboard Gear, what are the products that Dashboard Gear offers?
Yeah, so our main product at Dashboard Gear is what we call our connector series. And really, when we started the organization Dashboard Gear, we started it as a company that was going to do reporting and analytics. And as we got talking with people, we understood that really the challenge is around data. And so our connector product that we developed is really around how can organizations get easier access to their data. And, so what it does is it connects to organizations' ERP systems, extracts that data, puts it into a much more approachable format than right in the source system. And there's a variety of technical reasons for it that we'll get into later in the presentation of how it makes it easier. So we do that. We do a little bit of consulting around report writing, best practices, some of those kind of things, as well as, there's a lot of political ramifications when you start introducing reporting on HR data and finance data, and maybe on the healthcare side you get patient data. So some of those implications we get involved in trying to simplify that in an organization.
Okay, and if we're talking about just the Infor related products, we're talking about like the HCM, so GHR, WFM, FSM, right?
Yep, the full product suite on the HR side or on the Infor side. So as long as you have the data in Infor, our product will extract that.
And it's on-prem, cloud, doesn't matter, S3, whatever?
It really doesn't matter.
Okay.
The technology that we use to get at it and some of the hurdles that we run into are different depending on-prem or in the cloud. But at the end of the day, it's just moving where the server's located.
Perfect segue, by the way. So the next question is, what are like most common challenges and issues you've encountered recently?
Well, the biggest one is, the whole movement from on-premise to in the cloud. Organizations, it wasn't so much a matter of going to the cloud. It's because when they went to the cloud, they changed the model from being a single tenant model to multi-tenant. Right. And so the biggest challenge is really today that we're dealing with is how do you access your data when your data is not alone, when it's in a multi-tenant environment. So what I'm going to do is just do a little demo here of some things, and it's going to take a little bit to hook up. So why don't I start it on the demo for that, and we'll go from there. In this short video clip, I want to give you a little bit of an overview of the Dashboard Gear multi-tenant data connector for Infor. I'll be going through screenshots, not necessarily a live demo, but I think it'll give you a feel for the process that we're going. As I mentioned in our previous discussion, the biggest challenge that customers have when going to the cloud is getting access to their data. And that's really where our data connector platform comes in. What we do is we deploy a connector app to a SQL server that you can house either on-premise or in the cloud. That app then front ends kind of connecting to the Infor database, as well as generating the tables and keeping them in sync on the SQL Server side. How we do that is we first go to Infor and we set up what are called replication sets. The reason we do this is it really gives a nice platform for the customer to be able to define whichever pieces of data they would like to extract. So in the screenshot example that I'm showing you here, we defined a number of replication sets that start with DBG underscore here. And a replication set really is a grouping of files or tables that you would like to extract. That could be many tables, or it could be an individual table. So for instance, in this GLTD one that's here, that is just the general ledger transaction detail table by itself. Or it can be groups of them. So for instance, the CSF core, if I go into that item, it's showing me a list of the tables, which Infor refers to as business classes down below here. Now this allows you as the customer to be able to put in whatever tables you would like to extract. Now within each one of those, you can define the fields that you would like. Typically, we just say, give us all the fields. So export the complete account table, for instance, including the user fields and everything defined. But you don't have to. You could pick and choose which columns you would like to extract from that data. Now that we've defined the tables that we would like, what we've done is created a web service definition that we deploy inside of Infor. So we have a Dashboard Gear web service application that's kind of a listening for events. We take then on the other end over on your SQL Server and we deploy another application that you then set schedules to using the SQL Server agent. So you can create a schedule, for instance, in this example called financial rep set launch. And what you can do within that then is define whatever schedules you'd like to launch that at. So you could say, give me my financial data every 3 hours or once a day or once a week, whatever your frequency that you need that data brought in. And that can be down to an individual replication set level. So recalling back, I had that general ledger transaction detail. You could come in here and say, I want the general ledger transaction detail updated every hour, but I want all my benefits data only updated on Sunday afternoons. So you create whatever schedules. Once those run, what it does is it exports from Infor the schema, which means the actual structure of the tables that were there. So in this example here, I just displayed general ledger total in SQL Server. And it creates all the columns dynamically in your SQL Server, as well as then loads in the data. So it keeps that in sync. Now, each one of those tables can be synced in either incrementally or in full. So you can decide certain tables every time I just want to reload completely, and other ones that are just too large, you can say just bring in the differences that have occurred each one. So there's a little bit of artwork that's determined in what the right frequency is that's in each of those. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavor of the connector. We use rep sets, we front end and schedule all of that and keep that all in sync and capture errors and all of that kind of good stuff for you to keep things connected and synchronized. And that's, hopefully that gave you a little bit of a flavor for what we do from a connector perspective. So that basically solves that problem getting at the data that's there. And that really is the biggest challenge in the multi-tenant world.
Okay, great. That's excellent. I think that's a really good insight into what Dashboard Gear really is, because one thing from my perspective that has often been a misconception is that Dashboard Gear provides dashboards. That Dashboard Gears is a presentation tool set that allows you to build, but really what you're doing is making it way easier to create dashboards in any tool that you want. You're giving us the data model, a complete data model, not just specific scenarios, but all of your data from these, selected connectors, and then you, the client, customer can go out and choose Crystal Reports. You can choose Tableau. You can choose Burst, App Studio, whatever you'd like, and basically connect that up to your data model.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, one of the unique things, it's not just for reporting per se, because it is getting at your data. It's anything that you want to use that data for, whether it be third-party interfaces, data extracts, any of those kind of things. So it's really just getting you access to your data.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think one of the big hurdles that we've encountered with going to the cloud, particularly, is the latency of getting the data combined with the granularity of the data. So we can get near real-time data out of BIFSM in App Studio, but BIFSM data model doesn't have transactional data. We're rolling up. You can get transactional data out of the CSF Analytics data model or the HR Talent Analytics model, but it's not real time, and you have that load. So I think you addressed that answer in that video, but just to restate more simplistically, how is it that Dashboard Gear could help us to address those two core focal points?
So the near real time aspect. Yeah, so it really is a challenge in the cloud, and that's not unique to the Infor space or anything, but the minute you go to the cloud, the data's just not there. So unless the vendor provides something that is a view, directly onto it, there is the aspect of that latency of taking the data and moving it. So really what we came up with was more the ability to segment that out. And that's why I highlighted in my clip the general ledger transaction detail. Part of the art that's involved is really deciding what data you need and when. So as granular as you can make it is as fast as you can get it. So there are some things that are going to take some time. So whether you do an aggregation of the data to, bigger data models, you want to see the life-to-date balance of a project or something like that. It's going to take a little while, one, to get the data, but two, you got to calculate it. So there really is a little bit of artwork, and what we've tried to do is get it as granular as possible so that you can get whether just the transactions or the invoices or things like that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think the key differentiator here for me is when we look at the tool sets that are available, particularly the Infor space. Typically, we see customers starting from the standpoint of, here's this tool, I want to know how to use it. Really, we would kind of want to reverse that and say, here's your data, what do you need to see out of it, and then back that down into what is the tool set that might best deliver that for you, and not forcing the tool to do something that it's not meant to do. And by using your data model, we can actually utilize any tool, not just the ones that have the Infor delivered data models to them. Correct? Like App Studio, you can use on top of your data model. Burst, we can access live data from your data model if necessary, or if it fits the requirement, or we can go out to those third-party tools that we talked about before. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that, as you saw in that one slide, and actually, it's probably easiest if I show you a little more, and then we'll dive into why there's different types of data and so forth. So if you want to go over here, and I'll turn this on. All right. Just as I mentioned before, there were various types of tools and so forth that are out there. It's really important to understand that the data is stored in different formats because there are different types of reporting options. So we talked about operational reporting, and we talked about, KPIs and performance-based reporting. There's various types of reporting that you want to do. And as a result, the data really needs to be stored in multiple formats. And that's why at Dashboard Gear, we actually not only output the source into just pure kind of SQL tables, we also put it into cube formats as well. And that's really because both of those are optimized for different types of things. So why don't I just hop over and give you some examples? And kind of the best analogy that I use in these examples is, let's say you're a shopper and you wanted to go out and buy some apples. You as an individual, when you want to buy an apple, you usually go to a store to do that. So maybe you'll head over to the local supermarket and buy some apples. Now, if you're a buyer for Walmart that wants apples, you just can't hop down to the local store and buy apples from there. The volumes just aren't there. So there's different sources for that that product. And just like that, a report writer needs different sources depending on what it is trying to accomplish. So for instance, let's say I'm an accountant wanting to add information in my system. One of the formats that we output to in Dashboard Gears is a cube. Now you can also connect App Studio inside Infor to cubes. You can connect some other products to that, but I'm going to go ahead in here and just select a cube from my local machine that I have out here. This is a general ledger summary cube. What a cube does is really give you the data in an accessible format, and I happen to be using Excel here to get at that. So if I wanted to see actual amounts, I could just go actual amount. I could go by account unit, by year, by period, whatever the different combinations are the data that I want to look at. So maybe by fiscal year, by period, for my various charts. Cubes are very good at end users navigating through data in an ad hoc fashion, just looking at the information. So this product here, we create cubes for general ledger summary data, detailed transactions, AP on the HR, payroll. There's various subject matters that each of these cubes are, and they're really designed for more the end user to get at the data. So like analysts and accountants and so forth. So a very popular tool. They're not the best type of data source though, if I want to create a PO line listing or a payroll register, something that's highly formatted. I know we talked a little bit about pixel perfect reporting, that kind of layout, versus a cube is more for just ad hoc, kind of get at the numbers or summary data. So if I wanted to get more at that kind of pixel perfect reporting, one of the things I can use is the SQL data source. Like here's SQL reporting services. You could use Burst, you could use Crystal, you could use Tableau. Any of the tools, it really doesn't matter, because once we have the data in that SQL data mart, the data is available to you. So for instance, I can just go to that, create a report that's on the SQL reporting services reporting tool. I want to say the open PO lines. I can look at those aggregated open PO lines and I can see down to the details. Now these could be connected directly to those kind of source tables that we extracted directly from Infor. So I had the summary KPI kind of values. Maybe I did a P&L and I wanted to drill down to all the invoices or the POs that made up the number that I was looking at. You can then just kind of click and drill through. And the SQL data mart really is an ideal target for those kind of things. So the cubes are more for the summary or aggregated values or ad hoc type reporting. The SQL data mart's much better at detailed type reporting or kind of that traditional operational style reporting that you'd be looking at. Another way to look at it, where it's kind of a hybrid between the two, is when you get to things like Power BI, some of those tools. This can be placed on either one, and really at the end of the day, what I find, it comes down to the output that you want to do. If you want to do a highly summarized view, like let's say here's a head count or diversity kind of dashboards, those kind of things, these work well on cubes. You could do them on the SQL tables as well. And they also work well on cubes. Or if you want to do more of a listing style, these tend to work more on the SQL data mart. So you need really both targets for that data for it to work out. So hopefully that give you a little flavor of why you need different types of targets, and usually why it's a mistake where you'd have one common place, like a model that's just in one tool, because usually that model is only going to accomplish a certain segment of the type of reporting you want to do. And hopefully that gave you a little bit of a flavor for why, when we output the data, we output it to not just the SQL tables, but to the cubes, because how you structure the data matters. Then you put the tool on top of it. Right. Now, most of the tools will work on both, and that's where the confusion comes in. But what ends up happening is the vendor of that tool will say this is the best way to do it because their tool is best on it. So you have to be able to listen through that a little bit. And the analogy I always used in the past was, you can take Excel and write a letter in Excel. You can do it, but it's better in Word to do it. So just use the right tool on top of it. They both can do it, but you have to be a little bit smart. So keep both tools in your tool bag.
But what I like about the connectors you have there, we've got the good analytic models that we have gotten a lot of value out of with BIFSM and CSF analytics, HR talent analytics and whatnot. But what I think a lot of people are really having shell shock from and going to the cloud is where can they go and do that operational transactional reporting that they're so used to doing out of S3. The customers coming from S3, they're saying, where's LBI? And I always said this about LBI back in the day, was that LBI, there's a component in LBI that is really unique to any business intelligence and analytics offering out there, and that was the rights management. Rights management gave you that data level security, or as you might call it in the OLAP world, dimensional level security, where you say John Doe has access to company A, Jane Doe has access to company B. You connect those to your reports, and when John goes in, he sees company A. Jane goes in, looks at the same report, sees only company B. And rights management kind of created a user interface that was very user-friendly, that could be done by maybe a more advanced functional user, but a functional user nonetheless. Like, you didn't have to be a programmer like you would if you were using business objects universes, or using view times security, or setting up data level security in SQL Server. You really had to be a developer to do that. But with rights management, I'd love to meet the person that actually created rights management in LBI, because they must have been a genius. That's my plug for Rich, to give himself a pat on the back, which he won't. But Rich is actually the individual that was at Lawson at the time that had created that. Was actually how we initially connected, because I did the beta testing for that at my current employer at the time. And it was a great product. And so we have these users coming from S3, and they want that same functionality. They're like, where is this? Where's my rights management? It's there, but it's not really fluid, and it requires a lot of hands-on customizations. I don't suppose you have anything that might address that.
Well, we do. We have another product that we call our report distribution kit, which is all around the rights management. Very similar concept, where basically you map users to their data elements that they want to see. Not just, we try not to say so much from a security standpoint, it's more from a user experience perspective. So that, let's say I'm a department manager, I go in to look at my supply spend dashboard.
Yep.
It's not so much that I can't see the other departments, and there might be a reason for it where it's security. It's more that I just want to see my department. I want the noise filtered out, or I want to see turnover for my department. There is that security aspect, but it's more of, I get my relevant data. And now when you start doing that, and we haven't gotten to the point yet of marrying it up with like AI or some of those kind of learning things, but I think that's kind of the next piece, is more predicting what it is I need to see. There's just so much noise out there.
Workflow, that's what we call that. I call it, it's a difference between data level security and workflow. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it requires the same components, but a little bit different approach in terms of the end result. Yeah, that's great. I think that's something that we've heard a lot from a lot of our clients, is we want this data level security, and then we go over the effort to get that in using the current tool sets, and it doesn't quite match up to their expectations. So finding a more direct way to do that is encouraging to hear. So
yeah, the route we took on it was, there's bits and pieces in all the tools. So if you go into Burst and you go into App Studio, there's pieces in there that you can accomplish part of it. But what we did was, rather than go into a specific tool, like LBI had Crystal, it was assumed Crystal, right, which is what most people use. So that's why it was very effective that way. We instead approached it more from a SQL perspective. Yep. And so right now we're assuming a SQL statement. And so we're dynamically generating SQL statements. And so it tends to be a little more flexible for many tools, because it's into the SQL and not so much the tool.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any other connectors that we haven't talked about that we should?
Well, I touched on it at the beginning, I guess, was Kronos a little bit, which what I showed you on the Infor side, we tried to do some of the same kind of thing with Kronos, and similar kind of challenges. We haven't had any real traction yet on the cloud-based Kronos. We're hoping to kind of get there. We're not there yet. We're working with some organizations on trying to pilot that out. And so we have some plans in place for that. So we're going there. But from the direct connect single tenant Kronos people, yeah, we absolutely have models for that as well. And then we're always looking to entertain other platforms too. So
Okay.
if people have ideas. We've built a bunch out in a custom format, but we need to productize those things.
All right, great. Well, that's all the questions I have for Rich today. For those of you that are online with us, if you've got some questions, please punch them in, and we'd love to address them right here, right now. While I'm waiting on that, I'm going to plug the rest of our webinars this week. So tomorrow we've got burst notifications with Lisa Callahan and myself. I'm doing a technical session, a very technical session on App Studio Level Up. So we're going to talk about some advanced techniques and how you can make your App Studio reports more performative and just in general cut down your work efforts around your custom App Studio reports. And then on Thursday, Lisa Callahan again is presenting on HR talent analytics. And I think that rounds out our week for the reporting webinars. So Logan, we got any questions today?
We do have a few questions, and thank you, Matt, and thank you, Rich, for a great presentation. Let's get into a few of these right here. First question, what does the implementation look like, and when in the implementation project would you do this?
The implementation is, there's the way that most people do it, and then there's the way I'd recommend doing it. For whatever reason, reporting is always at the tail end. People put it off till the very end, and usually it's, we're going live in, 60 days. We need to build out all our reports. So that becomes this firefight. I'm sure you guys see that all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, all the time.
So I would say don't do it at the very end, even though that's what most people do. The implementation of Dashboard Gear, as you see, is pretty straightforward in that we basically just create the rep sets and put in our plugin. We approach it a little bit different than most products, and I'm use somewhat air quote, in that our product is a package of our services and the product. And so what we do is ongoing, we keep those modified for whatever data you want. So as you have new data needs, you get a representative that's assigned to you. So let's say I'm your rep. If you wanted a new piece of data, you just send me an email and say, Rich, can you add in union codes? So I go out there and I'd add in the union code business class and put that in there. The base implementation, of getting the base model out there is about a week per module. And when I say module, we have finance is one module, supply chain is one, and HR payroll is another. So if you were going to do our full suite, it's about a 3-week project to get everything up and running and being able to start writing reports on that data.
What if I'm an S3 customer that's planning to go to CloudSuite but are not currently in implementation? Are we going to need to, once we get to cloud, do we need to re-implement your solution? Do we have additional licensing costs or anything?
No, good question. No.
It's almost like I planned it.
Yeah, it's almost. No additional cost per se. There, some of our older customers that had the single tenant, we have added additional subscription onto it. So there's a little additional cost if you're a real old time customer. Sorry on that regard. But in general, let's say you are planning on going to the cloud. If you license our product or subscribe to our product today, we can do it on the S3. And then as you're going through the implementation, adapt in the cloud. There are some additional pieces you put in. As far as the reporting goes on that, the reality is some of it you'll be able to reuse, but most of it not. And I say that because that's one of our biggest questions we get. Can we just build reports now in the S3 and have them turn over? If you've done your implementation of the cloud correctly, the answer will be no, absolutely not, because you should be looking at how you've done your organization, how you've done your chart of accounts and some of those things. And there's so many more capabilities on the new cloud app than there were previously. So with that being said, if you've done a very basic job on reporting and just had, let's say, accounts and account units, and you just brought those over as is, you probably could reuse a lot of that.
But you don't want to bring over accounting units, believe me. It's not a good idea.
I echo that.
Yeah. It's not. It leads to very unperformative data models. So, great. That's awesome.
Logan, you got any other stumpers for me?
We do. We have a couple more. So I know Infor does have a number of reporting tools as part of the product. why would I need dashboard gear, and how would I know if this would be useful to me?
So I get the question all the time. So that, there's Burst and there's App Studio and a whole number of tools. So why would I need dashboard gear? As you saw, dashboard gear is not a reporting tool. It is a data layer for you that unlocks kind of some of the capabilities of those. So really, if you have a need to get data out of Infor and use it for any purpose, whether it's just ad hoc queries or someone writing an extract to their benefit provider, it kind of unlocks the data for that. Then you can take full advantage of Burst and App Studio and Tableau and Power BI and so forth. It really removes a lot of that custom programming work out of it. So it's not an either or kind of thing. It's in addition, this will make your life way easier.
And I can attest to it from the implementation standpoint. We've developed our own data models. We've used other vendor data models. I can tell you by far and away, using Dashboard Gears data model, it has allowed us to be way faster in what we do in developing reports. We can layer on much more advanced functionality and features onto the reporting, whether we're using App Studio, Crystal Reports, whatever the tool is, it doesn't even matter. It just allows us to spend less time figuring out how to get the right data out and more time figuring out how to present it to the data consumers at the client. So we're really big fans of Rich and Dashboard Gear, and that's why he's here today.
So yeah, well, and what I can say on that, on the faster part, just speaking from my experience on it, we do custom consulting, report writing in some cases. We don't do a lot of it, but when we do, if someone asks me to build reports, not on a Dashboard Gear model, it's usually 3 times the effort. Oh, yeah. So basically, if I had to quote something, it'd be 300 hours without Dashboard Gear and 100 hours with Dashboard Gear. Yep. So it's definitely, it speeds up that process quite a bit.
All right, we have one last question here. How does this differ from the Infor data lake?
So a similar kind of question, I guess, but more from the data perspective, which is actually a more true question, in that it's really, understanding the product. It is a data layer within it, and I get this one a lot. First of all, understanding what a data lake is. Some of you might not know what that is. So I'll give you my definition, and I'm a little bit somewhat close to it. That the person who actually founded or came up with the term data lake, many of you might not know, is actually an ex-Lawson employee. Who? James Dixon. Oh, yeah. He was a developer that built the old smart notification product. Right. Yeah. So he left Lawson to start a company called Pentaho, which is an open source BI company, and he's actually the person who coined the term data lake in the industry. So I didn't know that. So very close to it. Really, a data lake is a data repository that it stores the information. But the difference between that and like a data warehouse or a data mart is a data lake is more like a dumping ground of the data, where whoever's putting the data in could care less how you're using it. They're just saying, we want to give you the data. So it's a repository. It could be structured and unstructured data. So it could be Word documents, it could be Excel files, it could be SQL tables. It's basically a dumping of the data. So they don't get, the person putting the data out there doesn't give it any thought on the data. Whereas a data warehouse, the person putting it in curates the data, they scrub it, they clean it up, and they put it out there. So it's one is highly curated and puts the onus on the person putting it in. The other one is not, and it puts the onus on the person taking it out. So from the Infor perspective, the data lake is a place where Infor, and they're also saying you as a consumer could take the data from there and use it. So they could say our HR group is going to put data there, our finance is going to put data there, and then Burst, you can pick it up from there and deal with it. What our data mart does is more structures the data to put it out into a reporting specific place. It's designed more for the end user that's there, and we give it some kind of curation around the data that's out there. So there's a place for both. One is just a data holding ground for everything. The other one is more, how do you want your actual report consumers to be able to access the data? So that's really the difference between the two. I'm not saying one or the other. I'm saying you probably need both, just like on the report writing side.
Okay. Great.
Anything else there, Logan, come in?
No, that's all. Just once again, wanted to say thank you both for a great presentation. Rich, thanks for coming in to visit us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you the rest of this week. Take care.
Thank you.